This episode contains discussions of death, the deterioration of corpses, and animals eating corpses. Listen at your own discretion. It is Saturday, the 22nd of March, 2025. My name is Pigeon Rose, and this is my song of the day. Almost to the end of our Ireland-themed week. And we wouldn't be an Ireland-themed week without talking about a bit of Hozier now, would we? Hozier, Andrew Hozier Byrne. We talked about cherry wine a few weeks ago, and I had considered talking about cherry wine for this week, but I wanted to talk about In a Week more, but I still wanted to talk about cherry wine, so I just talked about it a few weeks ago instead. And now we're talking about In a Week. So, this is a song by Hozier from his first album. It's the only duet on the album. It's featuring vocals from Cowley, who is also in the band Wyvern Lingo, who I do not listen to, though I have heard a bit of, and I do enjoy them. And this song, I don't know what to say about it as setup, really. It's just a really good song from his first album. It's a pretty popular one with fans. You see people post about it. I mean, people have this whole, like, weird fucking mythologizing of Hozier being a lesbian bog body savior. The whole bog body thing very much comes from this song. So, I mean, I don't really have much else set up. Let's just go listen to it and then come back in a few minutes and talk about it. And that was In a Week by Hozier and Karen Cowley. Now, this song is about two lovers in a forest decomposing together. You can read it as surface level as you want, but I first saw someone interpret it, and then I saw that apparently Hozier himself has said this. Now, I don't know where the quote is from. There was no source on it, but apparently the song is about two lovers who went into the forest to have sex, and then afterwards lay there, like, satisfied and not wanting to get up and be like, oh, whatever happens, happens. We could just lay here and waste away into the ground, you know? It's kind of this, like, grandiose display of love in a weird way and harmony with the world. And I think that's really interesting. It basically lends itself to using death imagery to talk about love and commitment, you know? And I think that version of it makes sense given that some of the imagery can be read kind of sexually. So, let's go through it, shall we? I have never known peace like the damp grass that yields to me. I have never known hunger like these insects that feast on me. 1,000 teeth, and yours among them I know. Our hunger's appeased, our heartbeats becoming slow. So, I've never known peace like the damp grass that yields to me. I've never known hunger like these insects that feast on me. He's talking about being at peace here. He's never felt like this before. He's in this kind of euphoric state. The grass is yielding to his body. The insects are feasting on him in a way he's never felt hunger. But then he says, 1,000 teeth and yours among them I know, which some people read sexually. I didn't necessarily. I just read it as, like, when you love each other, you kind of absorb parts of each other. And so he's, like, making this into this literal thing of, like, you're also nibbling at me, if that makes sense. But reading it sexually also makes sense, yes. Our hunger's appeased, our heartbeats becoming slow. I mean, this is them in the come down, right? Quite literally. And then, we lay here for years or for hours, thrown here or found to freeze or to thaw. So long we'd become the flowers, two corpses we were, two corpses I saw. And they'd find us in a week when the weather gets hot. After the insects have made their claim, I'd be home with you, I'd be home with you. So, we lay here for years or for hours is a great sentence, and it sums up the whole thing of, like, not caring or paying attention to how long they're lying there. So it could be years or it could be hours, which it's funny putting the long one first. It also makes me think of the line, I always misquote this. Okay, yes. So, Grim Fandango is a video game. I played it finally for the first time last year. It's a video game set in the afterlife. Every character is a skeleton. It's this whole thing. But there's a great quote in it from a character called Membrio who says, "We may have years, we may have hours, but sooner or later we push up flowers," which is interesting that it's the same years, hours dichotomy here, you know. Thrown here or found to freeze or to thaw, just kind of talking about different ways the bodies are preserved or found, you know. So long we'd become the flowers. Well, when bodies decay, their essential nutrients feed the soil and help other things to grow there, you know. There's systems of body disposal where they, like, literally feed into a thing to grow a tree from the remains, you know. And then two corpses we were, two corpses I saw. I feel like that's referencing a poem or something. It feels like a familiar phrase, but I don't know. However, it is interesting that he says he saw them. It's like he's having an out-of-body experience and seeing his own body, you know. And they'd find us in a week when the weather gets hot. So apparently, according to Andrew himself, this whole song was inspired by, and this line in particular is referring to his hometown of Wicklow Hills. And he would say, anytime you hear Wicklow Hills, it's usually before or after the words, a body was found. And so he's talking about, you know, they'd find us in a week when the weather gets hot, because like this is where bodies are found, right? After the insects have made their claim, I'd be home with you, I'd be home with you. I love how this chorus keeps adding more lines about the decay of their body and the animals that feast on them. So he's saying the weather gets hot, their bodies would start to stink and decay, and the insects would be eating them, and that's when he would feel truly at peace, when he'd feel home, right? I've never known sleep like the slumber that creeps to me. I've never known color like this morning reveals to me, and you haven't moved an inch such that I would not know if you sleep always like this, the flesh calmly going cold. So this is the woman's voice now, saying a similar thing to what he said in the first verse, but saying like, I've never known sleep like the slumber that creeps to me. You know, I've never slept as good as death. Kind of makes me think of the sleep to the freezing line from Cherry Wine. I've never known color like this morning reveals to me. What's that bit? Ooh, I talked about manta rays in this podcast, didn't I? I believe so. You've haunted me in colors I've never seen, and you haven't moved an inch such that I would not know if you sleep always like this, the flesh calmly going cold. I mean, the implication is that maybe they're new lovers, and she doesn't know how this usually works, but she feels like, you know, the flesh calmly going cold. Like, is this normal that we're just going to lay here and die? Does that make sense? And then we get the pre-chorus and chorus again, but the lines are slightly changed. We lay here for years or for hours, your hand in my hand, so still and discreet. So long we'd become the flowers, we'd feed well the land and worry the sheep. They'd find us in a week when the cattle show fear. After the insects have made their claim, after the foxes have known our taste, I'd be home with you, I'd be home with you. So your hand in my hand, so still and discreet, is a really soft and gentle line, you know. So long we'd become the flowers, we'd feed well the land and worry the sheep. Well, feed well the land, I already explained. Sheep worrying is a thing that dogs do, apparently. And so he's talking about how, like, if sheep came across their bodies, I mean, they wouldn't be the kind of animals that would feed on it. They would see the bodies and be disturbed by it, probably. And then when the cattle show fear, again, cows also probably a bit perturbed by these bodies. After the insects have made their claim, after the foxes have known our taste, so adding in another animal that would potentially feed on their corpse, I'd be home with you, I'd be home with you. And then we get the bridge where you have Hozier in the background going, we'll lay here for years or for hours, so long we'd become the flowers. And Karen Cowley's going, they'd find us in a week when the weather gets hot, they'd find us in a week when the cattle show fear. And then it goes back into the chorus with both of them, and they'd find us in a week when the buzzards get loud, after the insects have made their claim, after the foxes have known our taste, after the raven has had his say, I'd be home with you, 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 I'd be home with you. So when the buzzards get loud, you know, vultures, buzzards, someone specified in Genius actually, BUTO buzzards apparently are the kind we get in Ireland. After the insects have made their claim, after the fox have known our taste, after the raven has had his say, adding that in at the end. Of course, ravens often seen as a harbinger of death. And then I'd be home with you, I'd be home with you. Oh, I love this song so much. It's just like, it's full of this like really morbid imagery, but also it's like really loving and sweet and tender, and I rather enjoy it. That's going to be pretty much it for this episode, I guess. Thank you so much for listening. Tomorrow's episode will be the final episode of this week. Yeah, so until then, thank you so much for listening. Please hit like, hit subscribe, leave a comment down below, tell me what you think, tell other people about the show. Thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to you tomorrow. Jesus Christ.